welcome to Blackspot. Right now, India is telling two completely different stories at the same time. One is a story of incredible growth, a rising global power that's creating massive amounts of wealth. But the other story, the one that data tells, is about record-breaking inequality and a democracy that's under very serious strain. In this explainer, we're going to unpack the research to try and understand how both of these things can possibly be true.
Okay, so here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll follow the money, the story of India's economic explosion and who's really been benefiting from it. Then, we're going to see how those economic fault lines map onto much older social divisions. From there, we'll connect the dots to the political shifts and what it all means for the health of India's democracy. And finally, we'll look at the two very different futures these trends are pointing towards.
So let's dive right in with the economy. Some researchers have actually started calling this new era a Billionaire Raj, suggesting we've moved from the old British rule to a new kind of rule, one defined by an unbelievable concentration of wealth right at the very top.
Now this chart, it really tells the whole story in just 3 lines. Take a look at that brown line at the top. That's the top 10%. You can see that starting in the 1980s, it just shoots straight up. But at the exact same time, look at the black line. That's the middle 40% of the population. It heads in the complete opposite direction. What used to be a somewhat balanced picture has totally flipped on its head in just a few decades. And just how extreme is this? Well, here's the number, 40.1%. Let that sink in for a second. The top 1% of people in India now own over 40% of the entire country's wealth. The World Inequality Lab says this is higher than it's ever been in India's modern history. And this isn't just about wealth that's been built up over years. It's also happening with what people earn every single year. The top 1% takes home almost 23% of all national income. To give you some context, the source material shows this level of income inequality is actually worse than in places like the United States or Brazil. So we've seen just how extreme the inequality is. But that brings up the next obvious question, right? Who? Who is at the top and who is being left at the bottom? The data shows a really powerful connection between these new economic divides and India's very old social structures. And this is where it gets incredibly complex. Because India isn't just a society with different economic classes, it's a society with these deep historic social hierarchies, especially the caste system. So what happens when you lay the map of money on top of the map of social identity?
Well, this is what happens. These charts, they look a little complicated, but the story they tell is crystal clear. They break down the population by caste group across different levels of wealth, from poorest to richest. And it doesn't matter if you're looking at the countryside or the cities, the pattern is exactly the same. The orange line, that's the forward castes, slopes way up. They're hugely overrepresented among the wealthiest. And the dark blue line, the scheduled castes, it slopes sharply down. They are overwhelmingly concentrated among the poorest. So what keeps this system so rigid? A huge part of the answer is something called caste endogamy. It's the practice of marrying someone from your own caste. A study from 2011 found that a staggering 94% of marriages in India happen within caste lines. What that means is wealth, opportunity, and social connections, they just don't move between these groups. It locks in the inequality we just saw generation after generation. Now, of course, these deep economic and social divides didn't just happen in a vacuum. They've developed alongside a massive political transformation in India, the rise of the Bharatiya Janata Party, the BJP, and its ideology of Hindu nationalism. You can see 3 really critical moments on this timeline. 1992, with the demolition of the Babri Masjid, a centuries-old mosque, by Hindu activists. That event just fundamentally changed religious relations in the country. Then you jump forward to 2014, and the BJP wins a single-party majority in parliament for the first time, a historic moment. And then in 2019, they don't just win again, they expand that majority. And the sources we're looking at document what this political power has meant on the ground. Human Rights Watch has reported on so-called cow protection mobs, vigilante groups that have been linked to dozens of killings, most of them Muslims. We've seen states pass new laws based on conspiracy theories like love jihad to police marriages between Hindus and Muslims. And all of this is backed by divisive language on the campaign trail and symbolic acts like renaming cities to erase their Islamic history. So, when you bring all of this together, the extreme economic inequality, the deeply entrenched social divisions, and this powerful majoritarian political movement, you have to start asking some really serious questions about the health of the country's democracy itself. What does the data tell us about the state of India's institutions? The V-Dem Institute, which is a major global project that measures democracy, gives a pretty stark answer. Just look at this table. On its Liberal Democracy Index, India has plummeted from the top 35% of countries in the world in 2014 down to the bottom 45% just a decade later. Its actual score was cut almost in half. But maybe the most telling change is that V-Dem reclassified India. It used to be called an electoral democracy. As of 2018, it's now classified as an electoral autocracy.
According to critics, a key part of this democratic backsliding is the alleged misuse of state power. This quote from an opposition leader really captures an accusation that you hear all the time, that central agencies like the CBI and the ED are being used as weapons to go after political rivals. And this is where the V-Dem report connects what's happening in India to a much larger global pattern. It points out that when democracies start to slide backwards, you see the same tactics over and over again. Governments try to control the media, and they crack down on civil society groups and activists. The report essentially suggests that what's happening in India fits a well-known playbook for how to weaken a democracy from the inside. So, where does all this leave us? When you put all of this information together, from the economy to society to politics, what you're left with are two powerful and deeply conflicting stories about what India is today. On one side, you have the story of India as an economic powerhouse. It's a story of rapid growth, of a country attracting investors from all over the world, a place that's creating billionaires at an astonishing pace. But then there's this other story, a much darker one, told by the same data. It's a story of an eroding social fabric, defined by the worst inequality in its history, deepening social divisions, and a clear, documented decline in democratic freedoms. These two stories, they can't really coexist forever. They represent the central tension defining India today. The research doesn't give us the answer, but it leaves us with the most important question of all. As India's story continues to unfold, which one of these powerful forces will be the one to write the next chapter? The analysis that we've walked through in this explainer was drawn from several key sources, including the World Inequality Lab, the Council on Foreign Relations, and the V-Dem Institute. Thank you for watching.